Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin, NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. Excuse me. So, first, I guess some housekeeping. Um, been away for a bit. If you can recognize, there's a bit of a change of scenery behind me. So, part of the reason for the absence, and things should be stable now moving forward. So, fingers crossed. And if you were keeping track for today, scheduling changed a couple of times. So still trying to figure out exactly what's going to work for scheduling. I think I've figured it out. And so what I put down right now is 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. And as always, it should be most days. Of course, that's subject to change as it just so happened previously. So moving forward, don't know for sure the exact timing. That's going to be the long term timing, but at least things should be stable now and consistent. It's just a question of getting the timing with this scheduling to kind of match up and work best for me. So, yeah, so we'll figure out about that as we go forward. But yeah, at the moment, 1:30 p.m. Eastern looks like it's going to be the right time. So we'll see. Uh, so that out of the way. Um, yeah, just for fun, let's talk about this. Uh, so for the most part, all my comments are on my shorts that I post. So I do, if you follow the long form first, in which I explain my position on different things. And then in the shorts, I do shortened versions. And it cracks me up. So in the comment section on my shorts, I'm getting razzed by people left, right, and center. It's pretty funny for me. Um, Now, so many people say, don't look at the comment section. And so obviously, I understand why, but I find it so funny. All the negative comments, I totally don't care. It's no big deal. Uh, Now, some things maybe I should be taking to heart as feedback, but it's more, I mean, nothing's constructive. It's just, I completely disagree or you're an idiot. And it's like, okay, well, thanks. Thanks for the feedback. I can definitely change my opinion based on that feedback. So again, for me, it's more entertainment than it is actually anything that I take to heart. Um, but I still, nonetheless, will look at comments because if there is something constructive, then of course I'm going to listen. If there's ideas, which is something that's important, that you should leave in the comments. If you have any uh, feedback or ideas or whatever, uh, that's where I'll be looking to get those ideas and feedback. Uh, so if you have something, definitely leave a comment in the comment section. And if it's to make fun of me or, tell me I'm an idiot, by all means, go for that too. I don't mind. Um, on that note, I'm a strong believer in thinking outside of the box, trying new things, finding unique ways to improve. Creative problem solving is one of my strengths, I believe, at least. Um, and so the things that I'll come up with, I don't, I won't necessarily say that they're going to be right. Of course, especially when it comes to comments on what GMs should do with trades and stuff, without being a GM and without actually doing the trades, I can't know what's going to work. But I try to come up with unique ideas that are going, or I think would work, and at least through the algorithm that I created and use for sports betting, which has been successful. Um, it tells me that my decisions are right. So of course that's what I'm going by. But unless you actually translate it to the real world, you don't really know how it's going to pan out. So so excuse me. So yeah. Anyways, so I just try to come up with ideas that I think would work, things that I would try, uh, what I would do if I was in charge, and all that kind of stuff. Um, So yeah, so just my opinion on things. I'm starting to realize that in my new location, I've got this big window right beside me, and I keep seeing squirrels running around, birds flying and stuff, and it's pretty distracting. So maybe I should close the curtains whenever I'm broadcasting. I'll just try to keep it out of my mind, but it's not going to work. I'm pretty sure this is true. So if you see me looking back and forth all the time, it's because random distractions. But anyways, so yeah, just trying my best. If you don't like it, tell me and I'll laugh about it. So that's great. But constructive stuff definitely I'll take to heart and listen to. If you think I'm saying something that doesn't make sense, well, you got to have some sort of rationale behind it that actually, has some good points. So, for example, if you're saying, I think a comment I saw was, "Don't trade away the captain because he's the heart and soul of the team." And it's like, okay, thank you. I understand what you're saying. He's important to the team, but okay, well, quantify that. Yeah, maybe that's not quantifiable. Okay, well then explain. So he um influences players in this way. So you've listened to team interviews, and all the teams say that he drives the team, and so uh, the pace of the team is strongly influenced by him. They win because their pace is better than other teams. So as a result, he's extremely important. Well, then that's something I can listen to. That's something that's got, you know, a, at least some rationale behind it that, you know, I can follow and say, okay, well, maybe have a counter argument to that or whatever. Or if you have some sort of advanced analytics that are telling you, okay, this guy, his puck possession time is outstanding, and although he doesn't produce points, he maintains the possession for the team, and then as a result, they have more opportunities on net, which means that they can score more, which means that they produce more, which means that they win, which means they need to keep him. Okay, well, there we go. There's some good logic there. But without that stuff, calling me an idiot and stuff, although it's funny, it's not very constructive. So, anyways, just a couple of comments I wanted to start off with. But keep those negative comments coming because they crack me up. So, all right. So, housekeeping out of the way. We are getting back to the swing of things, continuing my Be an NHL GM series. Give me a sec here. Oh, that's not right. That is right. Okay, so we're on part 6, which is the Boston Bruins. And of course, after having had a break of, I think it's about a month and a half, it's going to be maybe challenging. We'll see how it goes. Because this is always off the top of my head, no prep except for the fact that I know my subject and I kind of have a general idea of where things are going to go. But everything's on the fly. So we'll see how things go. And I'm starting with a team that I don't think is that simple because they have a lot of moving parts at the moment. We'll go through that as we go. So, if I recall correctly, the procedure I go through is to first give a background on the team's performance, the current GM, and then go through the moves, squirrel in my peripheral vision, I guess I may be a squirrel. Uh, and yeah, the moves that I would make if I was as a if I was GM of the franchise. So the major moves. So we won't. So having tried, I think on my first stream of this series to uh, talk about all the moves I would make, it's not realistic to go through. What is it? Uh, 4 times 4, 16 plus 6, 24. I think it's 25 roster spots a team has. So to go through, sorry, 23. 23 roster spots, and to go through all those and figure out how to optimize it for a team, it's just not realistic. Um, so to start with Boston, we've got the general manager, Don Sweeney. He's been in his role for 7.5 years at this point. Came in May of 2015, so essentially the off season that year. And so I think he's probably on the hot seat, and we'll kind of have a look now. Squirrels. As to my rationale why. So 7 years, and in those 7 years, they haven't won a cup. Now, they had won a cup in 2010-11. He wasn't GM because, like I said, he started in 2015. So for the 7.5 years that he has been in, they haven't won a cup. Now, he's got I would say a decent track record. It's not the worst. So he came in summer of 2015. So it would have been after the team having missed the playoffs. So his first year in, they missed the playoffs again, winning record. So I mean, they weren't far off. And you can't do things immediately after you take on a franchise. At least what I would say in general is kind of ballpark after around 3 to 4 years, you should be able to start to make an impact on the team. 3 to 4 years, you kind of need to trim the fat, so to speak, get rid of contracts that you don't want. And in general, you should be able to in 3 to 4 years. And you can start building the team you want. And then, ballpark a couple years to start to fill things out, through free agency and so on. So you should be able to, by about the 7-year mark, have things going. A good contrast is, for example, Dubas in Toronto, how he's been on the hot seat for a couple of years now, and I think he's been in his role for less, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's only been in for 4.5 years, and people are on his back like crazy. So, anyways, so 7 years is a time frame that things should have. You should have been able to have made an impact, and so yeah. So in that 7 years, he has lost in the first round twice, lost in the second round twice, lost in the third round once, and lost in the fourth round once. And that one, they went to the game 7 with St. Louis when St. Louis won the cup there. So they were close, very close. And I think that went to overtime, that final game, if I'm not mistaken. So a goal away from winning a cup. So a decent track record, getting past the first round twice, uh, or sorry, not getting past the first round twice and missing the playoffs once are the worst years, which is not that bad. And in the two times that they lost in the first round, they were at least competitive. So there's not really anything wrong with his performance. Um, Now, you could argue that uh, after 7 years, maybe they should have accomplished more with what they've had. Maybe. Uh, and the fact that essentially the franchise is going to undergo major changes soon, given that their core is aged and is essentially going to retire very shortly. Um, Soon would be a good time to make a GM change if you're going to. Is it absolutely necessary with Boston? I would say no. So he's not. I mean, he's not necessarily on the hot seat, but I would say if the franchise is going to make a move with their GM, it should be soon. And in fact, I would do it basically. I mean, you can't. It's tough at this point because this year they've done so well. It would be tough to do it now, and then next year you don't know how they're going to do. So it's hard to say if it would be next year they would do it, but it's going to be, I mean, pretty darn soon. If they're going to make a GM change, it would make sense to do it. So, anyways, people might disagree, but 7 years, no Stanley Cup, close. It's arguable, at least, that maybe there should be a change. Or if you're going to make a change at any point in time, it should happen soon, given the turnover in the roster. So, or the forthcoming probable turnover into the roster. So, anyways, that's at least the logic behind it. You might disagree, but it's at least something they should be considering, I would say, at this point, um, given the stuff I mentioned. So, anyways, not bad performance. Nothing really you would say where it has to happen, but it's something to consider, like I said. So, uh, now, just out of interest, I want to see if there's any bad contracts that he um, signed. If I recall, there's not many, if any, or any trades that were made. So just give me a second to have a scan through. So this is an example of me doing things on the fly. I don't know the answers to these questions, so I kind of have to look, which takes time. So my apologies, but part of the process and the things that come with this stream here. So, or this channel, I should say. Jake DeBrusk, 4 million. He's been worth it, so nothing wrong there. The Lindholm one, I didn't like. So he's getting paid. Okay, sorry, it's not horrible. 6.5 million per 8 years. I mean, he's a decent performer. It's not the worst. And I mean, by the end of it, how old is he going to be? 36. Yeah, the timing's fine, so that's nothing wrong with that. You know what? Let's just skip this for now, and we'll kind of discover as we go because I'm gonna have to go through the contracts anyway. So, um, ignore that. Any trades we'll look at. Lindholm for first, second. Ooh, that's a lot. Not horrible, but man, the Taylor Hall trade's good. Hall and Lazar for Bjork and second round pick. That's nice. Yeah, not seeing anything standing out that's horrible. That Rick Nash trade's not the best, but you don't know necessarily how things are going to pan out. Jesus, that was a lot they gave up, but nothing really of critical importance. So, Jimmy Hayes. Oh no, I'm thinking the other Hayes brother. Corrali and a first for Martin Jones. That's a good trade. Trading away Dougie Hamilton. That one I don't understand how that ever panned out because Hamilton's been a crazy good performer. They picked up Jones, Miller, a first round pick. Oh, wait, no, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. First round, second round for Hamilton. Man, I don't understand that. They got rid of Lucic. That was the Martin Jones, Colin Miller first. Oh, that's a good trade too. So anyway, so no, not really any horrendous trades, so not much to complain about. So maybe I should even be covering Boston, but essentially the whole series is about teams that have had a GM for a while and haven't won a cup. So it's within what I've set as the parameters for the series. So, anyways, so like I said, there's a lot of moving parts right now for Boston. The biggest reason, so for example, they lost Chera, I think a couple of years ago now. He was one of the core players. Tuukka Rask is retired now. Injury for him, I think, is the biggest cause of it. But anyways, he was getting older too. They've got Bergeron probably just about to retire. Krejci, who just came back, who went away and is probably at least not guaranteed to stick around. Marchand's 34 now, has 3 years left. So, Yeah, so it's just an aging team. What the average age is 30. Uh, what is the average age? So this just gives us a general idea. The source, I don't know how accurate it is, but it says 27. So they're one of the oldest teams. Where do they sit there? And this isn't even that, doesn't match up. But anyways, so they're one of the oldest teams. There's teams that are worse off, but uh, yeah. So they've got an aging team, and some stuff's gonna have to change soon to make the team actually continue to be a winning franchise. So, for example, if Bergeron retires, Krejci isn't there. You lose Bergeron's. Excuse me. Bergeron's like 25 plus goals a year on average. Krejci's um, under a point per game, but pretty darn close. You drop those two players, and I mean that's a chunk. Um, yeah. So, anyways, let's have a look at what I would do. So, uh, as previously, the tool I'm using is the Armchair GM uh, interactive tool at Cap Friendly. So it does all the heavy lifting for you in terms of calculating cap hit and space and all that stuff. Um, so that's what I'm using here. And so at the current moment, uh, they're essentially right up at the cap. So they're right at the cap. So what is it? 82.454 million, and the cap's 82.5. So they're basically right at the cap. Um, Now, what would I do given everything I've described so far for the franchise? So they're aging, so you're going to want to get younger to match the forthcoming core. So Pasternak, which is going to be tough because they haven't signed him yet. And from what I recall, the rumblings is that they're not really all that close on a contract. He's going to get a big raise. To what amount, it's hard to say. Uh, and then that's going to kind of dictate what they need, what they'll be able to do with the rest of the the roster. So something that I've always said is when it comes to negotiating these high performing players' contracts, at a certain cutoff, there has to be a certain cutoff point where you just can't do it, um, and where you can't rationalize having the person make what they're asking for, given that you have to round out the roster with other players. So, as a great example, what you're seeing in Edmonton, although they have two players definitely worthy of their contracts in McDavid and Draisaitl, they eat up so much of the cap space that then, well, their biggest problem right now is defense, and it has been for a while. And how can you afford to pay defensemen if you're spending so much for those forwards? Um, so that's the problem. And there's a similar, or you can say similarly when it comes to defensemen. If they eat up too much, then you can't uh, fill out the roster. Um, and actually, now I recall one of the major things that I would be doing here with this team. So, anyways, So they've got Pastrnak on an expiring contract, currently making 6.67 um, million, 1 year remaining, or well, this year, and then goes to UFA. And that's a major point there is going to free agency means you got to do something and you got to do it soon. Because if you can't sign them, you got to trade them. And if you can sign them, you got to sign them so you can get cap certainty moving forward. Um, so that's the big moving part. You can say also other moving parts like Krejci and Bergeron, but the biggest moving part is Pastrnak, what they're going to do with him. And so for Pastrnak, let's just pull up his stats here. So he's currently at 25 goals through 37 games. Sits around 40 goals a year, it looks like, and then about a point per game or slightly over. This year, above that trend. So, I mean, what he can fetch on the market, it would be as high as, McDavid kind of numbers. Because, of course, remember that McDavid was signed a number of years ago now. So let's just pull up. McDavid was signed in 2017, so 5 years ago. Well, 6 years ago. Is it 6 years? In any case, he's on his 5th year of the contract, 12.5 million. Yeah, so I mean, he could fetch as high as that, obviously. And I mean, so who else is there? It was McKinnon's one of the bigger ones, comparables that signed most recently. So So yeah, McKinnon was 12.6. So what I'm saying there, comparable to McDavid is probably accurate because McKinnon 30 goals over a point per game. And I mean, I would weigh goals more heavily than points. And so in this case, you could definitely argue that Pastrnak should be paid around McKinnon's contract. So would I pay that? God, who out of interest? Let's see. Just gonna pull up last year's stats. So Pastrnak, 15th in goals. Jeez. It's crazy to see some of these numbers. Like Matthews is 60 goals. So, for example, Matthews, he's a guy I would pay as high as McDavid. Draisaitl's worth it, but he's getting paid less, thankfully for Edmonton. Kaprizov's another guy. But as an example, so where do we have them here? So you got a guy like Kyle Connor, 7.1 million. So you contrast 7.1 million with 12.5. It's a big range of what you could pay Pastrnak. If you want to have a good roster that's competitive every year, you're going to want to be towards that 7 million. Is that realistic? Probably not. But I mean, that's where you got to figure out, am I going to pay the guy what he's worth and then struggle with having a good team, or trade him away because he's asking for too much and then find somebody else to fill the spot. So, I mean, it's a tough balance. So, for example, you go back to their roster and you've got Marchand, 6.125, 30 some odd goal scorer, over a point per game. So, not that far off in performance, and yet getting paid essentially half of what he probably could be getting paid. I mean, he's not quite a $12.5 million player, but you could argue 10 for Marchand. So, but he didn't go for that when he could have definitely gotten paid more. So, when was it that his contract was signed? It was signed 2016. Yeah, after a number of good years in which he could have fetched probably a lot more. So he's an even more extreme example versus Kyle Connor in Winnipeg. So the problem here is, can you sign him at a reasonable contract? And then if not, you got to trade him. So personally, my gut is telling me that he's probably asking for too much. Maybe not. Because he's currently at 6.67. He signed that 2017 after 30 goals. Jeez. So that's tough to say if he took a discount, or he signed for how many years? 6 years. He's due for a payday. Like, he deserves it, but geez, that's tough. So anyways, what I would say here is, I don't know what's going to happen for Pastrnak. What I would do is I'd probably target, he's what, 30, no, 26. 26. You'd want max years. And in order to keep the franchise competitive, you'd want under 10 million. Like I said, could he fetch more than that? And will he fetch, if he goes to free agency, more than that? Definitely. He's in free agency, he's over 10 million per year, pretty much guaranteed. So you definitely want under 10. I'd be targeting around 8 to 9 for the guy. Like I said, he's worth more, but that's what you need to round out a good franchise. So, or to maintain a good franchise, round out your roster. So, so the threshold, I would say, is, for me, would be about 9 something million. Under 9.5 is probably what I would say. And then if you can't get him for that, trade him. What you can fetch for him, God knows what. A lot. And are they going to be completely screwed if they lose him? Probably not. The team's not. They're not. They wouldn't be the worst. Like, they would still be a competitive playoff team, even losing him Would it make a huge dent in their competitiveness? Yes. But it depends on what you get back. So anyways, so that's what I'd say with him. Threshold's probably I wouldn't go over 9.5 myself, and, my target would be high 8s if you could make it work. Uh, so maybe 8.88888 because he did 66666 million for him. So that's what I'd be aiming at. Um, so we'll see what happens with him. Uh, and like I said, the whole roster kind of really depends on what happens with him. So in any case, so beyond that, they've got Marshawn. Like he's absolutely a steal. 3 years left. He's going to be 37 at the end. Probably ballpark going to retire at that point, but still should be competitive up until that point. And at a 6.125 million cap hit, I mean, there's no reason why you would ever get rid of him. Just probably the strategy I would go with is ride him out to the end of his contract, maybe sign him a year to 3 years, depending on how healthy and how his production is after that. 1 to 3 years, trade him at one of the deadlines and bring in assets. That's what I would say with Marchand, but definitely keep him for the foreseeable future. Taylor Hall, 6 million per 3 years remaining. Yeah, his performance has been, market value for what he's getting paid, really. Approaching a point per game, 20-ish goals a year. Fine value. Maybe I would want to have less money for what he's producing, but whatever. It's around the mark. So, and do you get rid of him? You could. I mean, to be honest, I'd be leaning towards him not being somebody I would want at that dollar figure on my roster. But it's hard to say really that I would do anything different. Because what are you going to get for him? Not really much. You're not going to get the same value back. It would be like assets or something like that, and you don't want that because they're not really a rebuild team. They're kind of a retool team as you go. So you kind of have to keep them. Probably trade him at the deadline when his contract expires is what I would do. So, but yeah, keep him until that point. Charlie Coyle, 5.25 per 15-ish goals per year, half a point per game. I'd say definitely overpaid, but can you trade him? Probably not. 4 years remaining on a 6-year contract. I'd say that's a bad contract. I wouldn't have done that, but because what? He's like third line center. One combination. Boston Bruins. Let's have a look. Third line center. I mean, well, and that's another example. Taylor Hall making $6 million on the third line. Like, come on, guys. So that's a great example of two contracts that, yeah, they're not massively overly paid, but are massively overpaid, but I mean, definitely too much. So, but can you trade that contract? He won't be able to because he's overpaid. So you're kind of stuck riding that out, trade him at the trade deadline, get something back. That's 4 years. You got to ride that out. Jake DeBrusk, $4 million per 2 years remaining. 2-year contract, performing quite well. 20 some odd goals a year, point per game ish. Nah, maybe under a point per game. And a younger guy, so he's somebody you'd want to have hang around. So definitely don't get rid of that. So there's a whole bunch of contracts that are all expiring after this year, which is going to clear out 6, 7, 10, 12 and a half, 14, 15, 16. So about 16 million is going to come off of their forwards from expiring contracts. That includes the Bergeron and Krejci contracts. So just to keep in mind, they've got lots of flexibility. So I forget what I just said, but I think it's like 16 million I said. So 16 million, you're going to spend, if you can re-sign him, Pasternak, spend another 2 to 3 million on him, more or less re-sign Bergeron, Krejci, probably. It feels like because they're having a really good year, they could win a cup this year. They probably, assuming they actually go far, they probably will stay around because both are producing. So that's going to eat up basically what they're getting paid now. So 4-ish million. Maybe they'll get a raise, both of them, because they took a pay cut. So let's just say 5 million of the 16. That's 11 million. Take away 2 for let's just say 3 for Pasternak. So that's about 8 million, leaving you 8 million to spend. And you can get a lot with 8 million to fill out the rest of the roster with what they have. I mean, so it's a pretty competitive forward roster. And I mean, you're going to be losing Foligno, Zaka, Smith, Nosek. Foligno, I know he went up and down, so you're just going to let that one expire or trade him at the deadline, depending on what you can do. I doubt you'll get anything, so they probably would keep him. Zaka's half a point per game, probably same story. Let it expire or trade him if you can. Craig Smith, expire, trade him. Performance isn't good enough. Nosek, again, performance isn't good enough. Trade him or let it expire. So really, that's great. They're in a great spot to do a lot with their team moving forward. Free agency with 8 million. And there's going to be a lot of free agents, at least at this point. Good free agents coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Just give me a second. I'll pull that up here. Free agents for the coming year. So Taves, Kane, Tarasenko, O'Reilly, Pacioretty, Klingberg, DeBrincat. I mean, you've got lots of options there. Larkin. DeBrincat's RFA, sorry. Yeah, a whole bunch of options of filling out Horvat, filling out your roster. And with 8 million, I mean, you could spend it all on one player if you wanted to. Because what would happen then? Let's say, so we're saying that they re-sign Pasternak under 10 million. re-sign Bergeron and Krejci for between them about 5 million. And so, like I said, there's about 8 million. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roster spots filled pretty much. Yeah, so you've got like, and they pretty much all slot into the top 9 forwards. So you sign another guy at the full cap space, just from the forwards at least, of 8 million, and you slot him right in. Now, of course, you'll have to fill out the roster with other players, so it's going to be what you have. What did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 roster spots, a million per. So, I mean, realistically, it's about 4 million, depending on what you pay Pasternak, up to 6 for a player. So, I mean, a $4 million player is going to kind of slot in at that spot, anyways. Hopefully, get him at it a discount to play for a competitive team. And there you go, and you've got 3 really solid lines. So that's kind of how I would let it go with the forwards. It's pretty straightforward, to be honest. All hinging on what exactly happens with Pasternak, but if you trade Pasternak, what I would say, if you have to, trade him for a guy that's going to fill out a top, preferably 6, definitely top 9 forward. You need to get a roster player coming back, because to just expect to do it in free agency is just not realistic. So, because theoretically, what you'd want to do is get a roster spot that fills that, what you would do. So, like I was saying, you sign Pasternak under 10 million, then you sign somebody in free agency at 4 million with the cap space you have, or you reverse, you pick up a roster spot of approximately 4 million, and then you sign a free agent at just under 10 million, like you would for Pasternak, preferably at around the same performance as Pasternak. So that's your kind of 2 options of how it would go. And then otherwise, I mean, like I said, really, Coyle is slightly overpaid. Hall is slightly overpaid. You let those 2 kind of expire and, fill out those roster spots with better players moving forward. Hopefully, you have development that actually comes in and takes those roster spots, or fills those roster spots when they expire, which presumably they can do. But of course, you'll kind of see. So that's kind of the situation with forwards there. Moving to defense, the glaring major move that I would make, or I should more say that I wouldn't have made if I was Sweeney, is McAvoy at 9.5. Only guys that should be getting paid that high on defense, in my opinion, are Makar. I forget the other guys that I mentioned previously, but there's like 3, 4, three, maybe only 2 defensemen that should be getting paid that kind of money, because that money really just eats up cap hit, and you don't get the production that you need out of it. So again, this isn't factoring in analytics, like or like the more complicated stuff like puck position and all that kind of stuff. Nonetheless, even if you factor that stuff in, you need performance out of those players. You have to produce something substantial to be getting paid that kind of money. So now I haven't pulled him up, but pulling up, I mean, he's under a point per game. You need to be at a point per game to be making that kind of money. So a great example is Carlson. So this year, yeah, everybody's like, oh, he's fantastic. Great, great, great. What is he getting paid? Like 11 something stupid million a year. Let's just pull it up just to make sure exact amounts. $11.5 million. 5 years remaining. So it's like the same concept there. So at the time when his contract was signed, Carlson was same kind of thing as McAvoy, one of these stud defensemen that are producing and they're fantastic. Great, 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 great. A driver from defense. Fantastic. Wonderful. Great. Yes, on the market, they're clearly getting paid that. Carlson got paid 11.5 back in 2019 is when his contract was signed. So it's like, okay, fantastic. Yeah. He's worth that on the market, but I would never in my life pay that unless you're a point per game defenseman and driving the team like a Makar kind of guy. It's just you can't spend that much because as a great example, San Jose, I mean, they've had trouble filling out their roster and they had Burns and Carlson making far too much. And then were they competitive? Yeah, at the start when some of their younger guys were getting paid less, and then you just can't afford the team and they tank. That's just how it is. When you overpay people, you can't fill out a roster, you can't stay competitive. I mean, if you're trying to go for a cup in a couple years or over a couple years, great. But it's just like, okay, we'll pay the guy that much for a couple of years and then, rebuild or whatever. But you sign the guy, you're stuck with him. Like they're not going to be able to trade that contract as much as everybody's like, oh yeah, everybody wants Carlson and Carlson maybe wants out of San Jose, but like who's going to pick up that contract when every team is right up against the cap? It's just not going to happen. You can't spend so much on defensemen. It's just not. You're never going to get a competitive team by doing that. It's the same concept with forwards, but to a lesser degree because they actually produce quantities similar to their pay, whereas defensemen get, as far as I'm concerned, on the high end, substantially more than what they should get paid. So, anyways, I see the McAvoy contract as the same sort of concept, not quite as bad as a Carlson contract, but right up there. So, yes, I mean, he's doing great this year. Last year, 56 points in 78 games. But, like, geez, you can't spend that. So, if I became, at this point in time, in charge of Boston, I'm trading away McAvoy. Now, again, the problem is trading away that contract. Now, because it's so early and because he hasn't had a slump yet, and because he's not quite at that $11 million defenseman contract thing, is the contract tradable? Yes, to a team that has the space for it, or where you can kind of, make something work. So in the McAvoy contract, am I trading it? Absolutely. Sorry. And everybody, this is going to be one of those ones on the shorts. When I make my short for this stream, I'm going to say trade away McAvoy, and everybody's going to be like, you idiot. And I'm going to be, it's the same thing. You can't spend that much on a defenseman. I'm even struggling to justify the Lindholm contract at 6.5. But 9.5 is just, you can't spend that. So anyways, if I became in charge of Boston, McAvoy is gone right away, and especially right away while he still has value and things haven't slumped at all. So now the question is what would you trade him for? That's a tough one. So you need to find a trading partner that can take on a 9.5. So I think, if I recall correctly, because now, like I said, it's been a month and a half since I last did a stream. The best trading partner was Colorado, where you take on a contract, let it expire, and then sign somebody else. So yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it was Colorado, but we'll have a look here. So Colorado's got I wish I had what their cap space was at the beginning of the year, because if I'm not mistaken, they had something like a couple million. But anyways, it's kind of besides the point. So the perfect person, I'm pretty sure that I mentioned previously, was Eric Johnson, 6 million. So it's a big chunky contract. It's about to expire. Colorado is probably not re-signing him, or at least they're probably not. They're definitely not going to re-sign him at that kind of dollar figure. So 6 million. Now the thing that sucks is with Boston doing so well this year, to trade McAvoy at this point, super tough. So I mean, so realistically, Don Sweeney's not getting fired. Secondly, he's definitely not getting fired right now. So we'll just say, for argument's sake, that I take over that I would take over the team at the end of the year, I guess. No. Well, we'll just have to say it's now, because to be honest, I would still do the same thing even if I had a hot team and you just got to trade the McAvoy contract. So McAvoy for Eric Johnson, because you have 9 million going the other way. Sorry, 9.5 for McAvoy. You need something else. So 3.5 million you need to pick up. There's nobody else. You don't want to take on a crappy long contract. JT Compher, I think, is playing well. Is he? Well enough, so you can't trade for that. Rodriguez is, yeah, I think that's the other one that I mentioned before, but I think he's playing extremely well, if I'm not mistaken. Not extremely well, but he's playing well. What else? I mean, Devon Taves would be super awesome to pick up, but it seems unlikely. Money-wise, Eric Johnson and Taves for McAvoy would work. They got Bowen Byram coming up. So they could conceivably do it. I mean, that's what I would want to do. I'd want to get a defenseman back. Would they do it? Johnson, Taves for McAvoy? Probably. I think Colorado would do the trade. Like, I know Taves is kind of a more rounded defenseman, if I'm not mistaken. I don't follow him super closely. But from what I watched when he was in the Islanders, he was a good mix. Jeez. Would they trade Taves and pick up McAvoy? So the problem is is McAvoy a better player than Taves? Probably. At that dollar figure for the difference in price, is his value worth it for the $5.4 million difference? Probably not. So it probably wouldn't happen. So that's unfortunate. And then there's nothing up front you could trade for. Josh Manson, no. Yeah. So I don't think it could happen because he's just getting paid too much. And see, this is the problem: is now trading this contract would be crazy. And he's signed for so long that to ride it out, it's also not a good option. Let's see. Let's try this way. So let's look at the highest paid defenseman and then try to find someone paid nearly as high, but better value, like basically where you're paying less and getting similar performance. So 9.5, no. Don't want to pay 8, but let's just have a look. How old are these players? Because the other thing is if you can get a guy, maybe if he's getting paid high, but similar performance and his contract expires ballpark when the rest of these guys expire. So you don't necessarily need to get a young guy back, but just similar performance, similar expiration, so that the whole franchise can kind of move as one solid, or have one solid trajectory as a franchise. Marchand, 34. Yeah, somebody low 30s, but man, this team's going to be in trouble at the end. Like, this is an example of probably a full rebuild, like where they're going to have to tank for a number of years because they don't have any young guys coming up. Pasternak was like the one, and that's basically it. So they're going to kind of have to tank. Yeah. I mean, their defense is kind of had a good age. I don't know. Let's just still have a look because it's kind of in the middle there. Jesus. Seeing some of these contracts, it's just like unreal. Mm. Oh, and does he have any terms on his contract? Yeah, no terms, thank God. Okay. So a guy I kind of keep going back to is Spear in Arizona. Arizona's got the cap space, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, tons of cap space. And then you got a really good performing defenseman. And I mean, I know I sound crazy, but like I'd almost trade McAvoy for a bag of pucks just to clear out the contract. But so if you could get something of good value back, then that's what you want to do. And Spears, I mean, he performs really well, and he's cheap too. And I think his contract expires this year too, so you've got flexibility there. Yeah. Hmm. Well, we'll just revisit that. I'm just going to keep having a look through the rest here. Oh, I'm funny because I'm looking at the list of defensemen. Lindholm's actually playing quite well this year. So the value you're getting there is good. So that's good news. And then I don't even have to look to say about trading him because I mean he's close enough to the what he should get paid anyway. So I wasn't necessarily going to think about trading him. Yeah, and it's unfortunate because some stuff it just doesn't line up. So, like for example, would like I see a player with Calgary, Rasmus Anderson, maybe you'd want to trade for him, and then you'd pick up some other crappy contract, like a Lucic contract. I think he's still in Calgary, isn't he? But Lucic isn't going back to Boston, so it's just not something that's probably going to happen. Detroit's not going to pick him up. Eiserman's not crazy enough to have that kind of a contract on the books. No. 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 I think Anaheim has cap space. 14 million. Actually, both of these guys could work. So they've got Klingberg and Fowler. Both of whom are decent performing, both of whom have reasonable contracts. Fowler's expires in 4 years and he'll be 35. So that matches up with the flow of ages with Boston. And then only 1 year for Klingberg, 7 million. Same thing. And he's 30. I mean, those are perfect right there. Either player is a perfect option. Would Anaheim do it? Probably. I mean, they like defense. Their GM changed, but they like defensemen picking up a guy like McAvoy. The dollar figure, I think, wouldn't be unreasonable. I mean, realistically, you'd want Fowler because he's got years left on his contract. His performance is still fine. What's his trade terms? A 4-team trade list. Where is he from? Windsor. Jeez. Would he go to Boston? Maybe. Well, with so many moving parts in Boston, if they picked up Klingberg and they couldn't re-sign him, could they re-sign somebody else in free agency? Maybe. And then if he just expires, then that just expedites the process of the team turning over. Yeah, that could work. So they got a couple of trading partners, I think. Arizona for Gossespear, Anaheim for Klingberg or Fowler, preferably Fowler, though. Yeah. And what's Klingberg's? 10-team no trade clause. Till the end of the season. Okay, so then, and he's not going to say no to Boston, I'm nearly certain. So I like that. Anaheim is probably the most logical trade partner. Arizona would work perfectly fine too, with Gossespear. I would want somebody with a more consistent long-term track record like Fowler. So that's who I'd be targeting. At 6.5 million, that's great. A great contract to pick up for him. Yeah. I'm just gonna have a quick scans, just another way here, and see if there's anything else that stands out. Um, no. Yeah, so I think that's the best I can see. I mean, just on the spot here, having a look. We'll say uh, trade with Anaheim. I mean, the easiest trade would be Klingberg. Would Fowler choose? I think said it was 4 teams. Would Fowler choose Boston as one of his teams? We'll just keep it simple and say it's Klingberg. So, pull up my algorithm here and make the trade. Or, well, what else would they get in return? Because I'm pretty sure it wouldn't just be 1-for-1. I'm pretty sure Boston would get something else back. Do they have any prospects that are good in Anaheim? Let's see here. Yeah, nobody on their roster at the moment, or that they could conceivably get in a trade at least. Yeah. So it's gonna have to be 1-for-1 plus well, uh, do they even have prospects? Well, I don't know anyways. It doesn't impact the team at the moment, but preferably you'd want known prospects, um, moving forward. Let's just actually have a look here. Yeah, I mean, maybe not even the prospects they have, because at the moment it doesn't look like they're all that great. Just get draft picks instead. So, anyways, so we'll just say we are going to trade 1-for-1. Where is he? McAvoy gets traded for where is he here? Klingberg. So it'd be probably McAvoy for Klingberg, and I mean, you could maybe get as high as a first-round pick, given McAvoy's age, but it could be second round, couple second rounds. What does Anaheim have? They have multiple second-round picks this year. So something like McAvoy for Klingberg. What do they? They'll have Boston's picks for Anaheim's second round this year, next year. It probably would be a first. But anyways, let's just, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant because it doesn't impact right away. So let's just say McAvoy for Klingberg and 2 second-round picks. And a third. So that immediately drops $2.5 million in cap hit and gives them the flexibility of an expiring contract at the end of this year. And he's also a right shot defenseman, which fills in the spot exactly. So, I mean, you couldn't make a more perfect trade for what I'm looking for, at least, the parameters that I'm considering. So, and then according to my algorithm, if we change McAvoy for Klingberg, there's only a tiny dip in expected goals for. So when I say tiny, I mean 0.002 change, a decrease in expected scoring. So for all the flexibility and the cap space that you get, for me, it's a no-brainer. So, yeah. And then so otherwise on defense, Lindholm, I mean, 6.5 is fine. Brandon Carlo, 4.1, 5 years remaining. That's expensive, but you probably can't trade that. So, I mean, it's not crazy expensive. So, worst case, let it expire. Grizzlick, it's good value. Keep him. Forbert, I mean, slightly overpaid. Keep him until it expires, basically. Kind of decide from there. I think that's essentially it. Yeah. So really, the big move is getting rid of that McAvoy contract. And then Hallmark, $5 million per. Funny, at the start of the year, I was like, oh, that's way overpaid. He's not worth it, but he's been playing extremely well. See his stats specifically. Now, the other thing just to consider, again, this is in some fantasy world where they do trade McAvoy, but remember, if you let's say you trade McAvoy and you don't trade Pasternak, that clears up just from this trade an extra 2.5 million that you can spend on Pasternak's contract if you wanted to, which you shouldn't, but you could theoretically. Because I mean, 40 goal scorers are hard to come by. So, would you bite the bullet and pay 10 million, assuming he would accept that, and be able to do that from getting rid of McAvoy? I'd much rather pay Pasternak closer to market value than I would keep McAvoy and pay him what he's getting paid. So, just something else to consider, at least in terms of the sequence of trades and the trades themselves as well. I didn't know Swayman wasn't doing as so well. So, I mean, he's 7-3, which is a great win-loss record, but 0.897 save percentage, which is not very good. And Allmark is 0.939, which is quite good. And he's 21-1 so far. Outstanding. So, yeah, so at the beginning of the year, I was actually thinking maybe Allmark was overpaid. Going back historically, I mean, it's not crazy. He's a 915 on average save percentage goalie. So, so maybe I would have said trade him before, but probably not even. So, and I think it's 3 years remaining if I saw right. Yeah. So, I mean, you would even be fine with letting that expire if he turns out not playing well moving forward. So really in the end, the only trade that's essential is to move that McAvoy contract, as far as I'm concerned. Clears up 2.5 million cap space. Like I said, gives you the flexibility of the expiring contract. So if you want to re-sign him, like he works out great, and you want to re-sign him, go ahead. You don't, you can let it expire and then hopefully find a replacement on free agency. And like I said, or sorry, just before I get to that point, Pasternak, like I was saying about him, if you can't re-sign him at a reasonable dollar figure, you got to trade him, got to get good value. You can't let it expire at the end of the year. That would just be a completely bonehead management decision. What's his trade terms anyways? 10-team, no trade list. So that's lots of flexibility there. Because somebody would take him. So yeah, really that's it. So the McAvoy contract I get rid of, and everything else. That's what I was getting at. Is so basically they have the window's almost this year. You could argue that it's closing this year. If Bergeron and Krejci don't come back or something along those lines. Because and then depending on what happens with Pasternak, because that essentially really damages the team, those three players not being there. So what happens with them kind of dictates the direction of the franchise. So what I would say, this is pretty much across the board, is their window is 1 probably one would be a bit short because I think everybody's probably going to come back next year. So it's probably so including this year between 2 to 4 years. No, 2 to 3 years because mm, well, Marchand's going to be 37. So yeah, we'll say 3 to 4 years is kind of their window to win. After that, it's a full rebuild. Their cupboards are pretty bare, it looks like. Prospects, I don't know enough about their prospects, but if there's nobody currently on the roster, as there isn't at the moment, then that means the prospects aren't good enough uh, to transition into a new core of players in that time frame. So 2 to 4 years, you're going full at trying to win a cup or multiple cups if you can. And then after that point, it's a full rebuild in Boston. Um, so especially given that fact that McAvoy contract just doesn't make sense because why would you want him on the books if you're rebuilding? Maybe just to at least get to the cap floor, but I mean, even with that, it's like you can do it other ways that are way more flexible than that. I think it was 8-year contract. Yeah, 8 years. It just started this year. Yuck. So, anyways, yeah, 2 to 4 years competitive window. Get rid of McAvoy contract and shoot all your bullets these next 2 to 4 years because you're going to be in trouble after that. And so, if I had to take a guess, they're probably going to leave Sweeney for 2 to 4 years, and then they're probably going to fire him for the rebuild because what has he left them? Draft and development clearly hasn't been good enough, or they've traded away too much of their prospects and stuff. Or sorry, prospects and draft picks, which at least for the next 3 years, they still have most of them. So it's just historic overspending maybe in trades and not good enough drafting and development because there's nothing there to hold them moving forward. So that kind of is it. So thanks for tuning in. If you like the stream, hit the like button, share with your friends. Otherwise, subscribe, please, if you can, because that helps me in the long run. And otherwise, you can turn on notifications and it'll tell you when the streams are coming up, or it should at least. I think it does. And yeah, if not, at the moment, like I said, I believe I said it was 1:30 p.m. Eastern moving forward. Yeah. And that could change, but I spent some time, which is part of the reason for the delay of the start of this stream, to figure out the best way to fit this in. And I think that's, well, based on what I had time to take a look at, that's what I think the time's going to be. Again, as always, it should be most days. I shouldn't be missing any days moving forward, given that everything's kind of more stable now. So that's about it. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Tomorrow, if you haven't seen already, we're going to take a look at Ottawa, same story as this one. So see you then.